Hi, and thank you for joining us once again here at SGTV. We are back here in the studio with Nigel Overton from Kinetic Electrical Contractors. So Nigel, you've been on the show before. We've talked a bit about your journey and how you set up your own business. Today, I want to talk to you about it's a lot more to do with the money side of things, not in terms of like the millions that electricians make and wiping the heads of £50 notes and things like that.
The myths.
Yeah, but more to do with sort of speaking to clients and how you're pricing jobs, that kind of thing. And we hope it'll be useful for our audience to have your perspective on how you do it. But one thing that is an issue is if you've gone into a client, whether that be domestic, industrial, however it may be, sort of how you're pricing jobs. So is there a formula you use, for example?
I wouldn't exactly say a formula. I mean, pricing a job is pricing a job. You work out your materials, you work out your labour, and mark upon materials and sort of bang it all in. Obviously, the more experience you're going to get going out to look at jobs, the more you can realise that actually that's going to be a nightmare. I need to stay away from that, or sort of steer the customer more towards, it's not really like a good state of affairs. You could do with recommend sort of like upgrading and just generally just build a rapport with your customers and have conversations. We offer sort of like a no, we'd say BS approach. Try not to swear, and just sort of tell them straight how it is. And we find that most customers respond sort of like well to that. There'll be a lot of people out there that'll go, we can do this and save you a bit of money here. But the reality is, especially when it comes to electrical safety, are you prepared to cut corners on that?
Safety is, there's no shortcutting on that.
You've saved, I don't want an SPD. I've saved 50 quid, whatever on that. But then there's a surge in network and you've lost your, £1,000 laptop for an example. Is it worth it? So, yeah, we just kind of try and put the points across in a clear manner, and they usually respond well to it.
You say usually. I mean, having spoken to other electricians, they've told me examples where a client's potentially argued a price. Do you ever get that?
Yeah, you get it occasionally, and we won't even enter into debates with it. But we put forward sort of like a proposal of what we're going to do. If they turn around and say, "Well, that seems a bit steep," we say, obviously we're there working for a customer. We're trying to give them the best sort of like value for money and the best options. So we'll work around. We can lose a little bit here. We can do this. We can tighten up costs. And some of them are sort of like, happy, thanks for that, and I'll go for it. Some of them are just, I can get, the builder said that he can do it. If that's the route that you want to go, and with the complications to go with it, then fine. We'll just walk away. It's not worth it being involved in a race to the bottom, so to speak. You set your price. Same with setting your price as an electrician. You set your price to where you fit within the market and the value and the experience that you can bring. If people don't think that you're worth that money, then
that's not the client you want, is it?
That's not the client you want.
Do you think that because you're mainly, am I right in thinking you're mainly industrial? Because you said you do other bits as well.
Yeah, I'd say we are probably 75 to 80% commercial and industrial. We do domestic, but that's a different conversation itself, because what we charge sort of like an industrial customer, you couldn't charge a domestic customer. It just wouldn't fit in. But the experience that we can offer in an industrial environment is, far superior to somebody, say,
there's a lot more to it, isn't there?
Who's not very experienced and does a lot of like domestic work. If you put them, say, like in a big control panel or wiring in sort of like motors, anything, doing a big battery build for a UPS system, they're going to potentially be lost. It's going to take them longer. It's going to take the time to build up that experience. Obviously, we have that, so that's why your price point sits where it is.
Do you think that the type of customer you have in them sectors, it can be an arguing point in terms of you're not going to get too much feedback, blowback on pricing from your industrial clients, but would you say compared to the other sectors you work in, you might get a bit more from them where they're personally themselves trying to save a bit of money rather than a company who's just happy to?
Yeah, absolutely, because domestic customer, it's money coming out of your pocket, and the fact that we're VAT registered, it's we're on the back foot already. They're going to pay 20% more with us when they could with your local one-man band. But it's the support and everything that you can get like involved with that. So with the sort of like larger industrial customers, then it would be a case of we've built a relationship with them, and a lot of the time it won't be a quibble. They'll probably get a few different other prices and stuff, but when it sort of comes to the larger industrial jobs with the kit that you're pricing on that, then the price point is drastically different, and that's why we specify on our quote sort of what materials, what say if we're installing a UPS, what battery runtime, everything, the guarantee, the lifespan of the batteries, everything like that, all detailed in the quote, so they know exactly what they're getting. Because that is the hardest thing we find with industrial, is that they're getting two quotes. One's 20 grand more than the other. Why? I've asked you to install a UPS. Why is one a lot more than the other? It's because the amount of sort of like detail and research and the product difference. So the more detail that we find that you can put on a quote, the better.
Yeah. Does that include like a maintenance fee or anything where like a call out, we'll be here at any point to help back up and support you?
Yeah. So within this, so if we were installing the UPS, then we would offer them different levels of packages. Usually liaising with a UPS company to have one of their engineers present, and we involve that in a package deal with them, with the customer directly.
I wanted to ask about markup, because I think most electricians, most tradespeople will have markup, and I think that's fine. You know, you're responsible for taking your own van out to a wholesaler or wherever you're getting your products, and that's time and effort which you should be being paid for. The markup you might put on some domestic products, sockets and switches, is very marginal compared to a markup that you might apply to some of the bigger products that you're putting into industrial units. Do you find that's, not in a greedy way, but do you find that's a nice earner in itself?
Yeah, it can be, but as you've said, with a small markup on your sockets and your switches and stuff like that, that's kind of like a given. And if we're buying from a wholesalers, we're building up a good relationship with the wholesalers, we're going to get good prices. So by the time you've added a markup on it, a lot of the time it can just be equal to, or if not just slightly less than they could potentially go to and buy it like that. With the larger sort of items, so it can be a good earner, but it's the background that goes into it. The to and fro with, say, if we're providing an LV switch panel or something like that, it's not just a case of X amount for the product. It's the fact that we've been back and forth into design stages, tweaking this, doing this, we want to do it like this, and designing it so it'll fit our installation as well as giving the customer what they require. So that time is money.
Yeah, and it's research, isn't it? Like you say, you know, if you're a domestic, you need a fuse spur there or a 45 amp switch there or whatever. But then to think, okay, I'm not going to pretend to know what, the ins and outs of the industrial side of things, but some of the systems you must be putting in place and the right loads for batteries and inverters or whatever it is you're using, that you've got to, I imagine that's got to take some stop and think, and actually, is that the right, or should I be using this? And it's going to take more time than 45 amp.
Yeah. It's not a point and shoot. There's a design aspect, and there's that process to go through, which does take time. And if you're doing it properly and giving the customer exactly what they require, not just sort of licking and sticking your finger in the air, then it costs. Time's money. And
you're designing the systems as well, because I know some industrial electricians, they're using companies that are just solely designing schemes and schematics.
Yeah, it would depend on the size of the installation, really. If we were designing a UPS system, we'd design all that all ourselves, do all the cable calculations, everything, prove everything like that. We've got a consultant that we'd use for larger jobs, and especially it can get a bit trickier to do with some sort of like MOD and some specific things that they require. So we know the capabilities that we can do, and I think that's very important as an electrician or a contractor to know your limitations and know when you're out your depth
Yeah.
to get the help. Otherwise, you're just gonna make a.
Is that easy to
mess of it.
communicate to your customer as well? So if you're saying to a customer, I need to get a team in or a consultant to tell me how to do this, and then I can put it together.
Yeah.
Is that difficult to sort of communicate where they might lose trust or anything like that?
No, not especially with sort of consultant we'd use. We'd bring them in. They work with us, and it's kind of it's not like it's a separate thing. Like we're working together to give you the best solution and the best product.
I guess again that comes down to the type of client you're working with, rather than Betty wanting a new
exactly.
thing you've got.
I mean, if I was wiring a kitchen extension and said I'm going to have to bring a consultant in to have a look at this, I think they'd be scratching their head going like, who've we got here? Is this Dave from the pub?
Well, I'll tell you what, some of the electricians we've spoken to, some of the work they've uncovered from jobs they've gone on to from whether it's previous electricians or homeowners, DIYers, you'd wonder whether that they could have done with a consultant coming on to help them. No. Have there ever been any instances where you've priced a job that might be wrong and you've regretted it afterwards?
Yeah, there's definitely been elements that have been missed on a job, and that's life. you never. I think you'd be very naive if you thought that you could go to every job and price it 100%. There's always going to be things that are missed, and I find it's always that sort of give and take. Sometimes your profit margin's not going to be where they should be. Sometimes you're going to complete a job quicker, something's gone really well, and you make a little bit more on that. I think that the key is not be greedy.
Yeah.
And it's when people get greedy and they think, push the boundaries. You just think, you're just ripping people off.
Yeah.
And we flat out won't do that.
When you're turning up in a Ferrari, your client's going to start wondering why, aren't they?
Yeah, that's not quite right.
I'll explain the date to our audience in case they're watching this later on at some point, but we're filming this in end of April 2022. So currently in the news, prices of everything are just going crazy. Energy, products, food, everything. So are you finding when you're out on jobs quoting, by the time you've quoted, you're going back to your wholesaler, if there's been a difference in the day, because I imagine some wholesalers' prices are changing by the day.
Cable prices for the minute from our wholesalers, they'll hold the prices for 48 hours.
Wow.
48 hours is, it's useless. We can't do anything with that. So what we tend to do is within the price of cable, especially like your large cables, if you're pulling in 630 mil AWAs, the price of that is massive. Like per meter is huge. So we normally tend to have a look at the trend with other prices, try and add a couple of % in where we can to cover that. We keep the validations for the quotes for 30 days. If they click over than that, then and again, transparency, honesty. We just turn around and say, look, the cable's costing us more, it's going to have to cost you more. And depending on the size of the job and the amount of cable, if it's minimal, and to a point dependent on the customer.
Yeah.
If they're a loyal customer, we've had lots of work off it. We think, fine, we'll leave that one. It's not worth a couple £100 or whatever. It's not worth. Just leave it as it is. If it's a new, not necessarily a new customer, but if it's a more difficult customer, then you're not going to be willing to take a hit. But it's about, like I say, give and take, not being greedy. And in a minute. So it's wood. It's not even wood. It seems to be working for us.
It'd be interesting to see if anyone watching this, has had the same, ease of price when it comes to dealing with the wholesalers, or whether their customers are kicking back at them. Yeah. But there's not much you can do about it, is there? And hopefully, with people being aware of what's going on in the world, as best as you can with all the crazy stuff that's going on.
It's not exclusive to electricians. It's everyone. I know. Carpenters, everything.
I paid nearly £2 for a bottle of Coke the other day.
Outrage.
Has Amendment 2 affected your prices at all?
Not massively. We would always, with the SPDs, we'd always be pushing to install an SPD regardless. We'd say that it's not worth the risk, and unless they sort of said no, we definitely don't want it, then then we'd leave it out. But no, to be truthful, not massively. I'm glad certain things didn't come in. The Earth Foundation bits that we sort of touched on the first Zoom sort of podcast I did with you. I am quite glad that didn't come in, even though it wouldn't have affected us massively. It would have been more new built houses, but I could see that been a serious headache.
So that'd be more of a headache as well for retrofitting into big blocks and places like that as well.
Yeah, we tend to get away with a bit more industrial because a lot of them are like steel fabricated buildings, which would be embedded in soil with the bonding already in place with that.
So you just tie into that.
You tend to get away with it. But no, I'd say Amendment 2 hasn't massively affected cost. But as I say, that SPDs was always something we were trying to incorporate in. Hopefully, probably naive, it will tighten the gap between people that were just not offering them, because now they should be offering them. But again, that's a bit of a side argument with people not installing a correct kit. You can't compete.
I might be wrong here, and I need to get clued up on this, but with AFDDs, they're not a requirement, it's a recommendation.
Yes. So, well, it's for the high risk sort of buildings, things like HMOs, high-rise buildings, those sort of not buildings.
Necessarily on your local domestic, but does that does that go knock on into your sector?
I mean, to be truthful, not massively. We haven't done any work in HMOs. We rarely sort of touch high-rise blocks of flats, anything like that. Thatched cottages is a possibility where we are in sort of like rural Wiltshire. There's quite a lot of those. But yeah, I mean that is gonna cost the customer more. But you'd like to think that if they were coming to you for a price and they were coming to another electrical contractor for a price, that it would be relatively similar because you're offering the same product. It's when somebody's still offering a split load board and you're pricing for AFDDs, like it's never going to be in the same figure. Not even close.
I did recently see a plastic consumer unit recently installed. So not going to name names or anything like that. Right then, Nigel, thank you for talking to our audience, coming on the show and giving us your insight and answering our questions. It's been a pleasure to have you join us. As mentioned before on our other video with Nigel, you've got an Instagram page, so if you want to tell our audience where they can find you.
Yeah, it's at Kinetic Electric Limited on Instagram. We're not that big, so give us a little follow, show us some love, and we appreciate it.
Go on, everyone. The more people on there, the merrier. Just give them some likes on there. As always, please make sure you like, subscribe, hit the notification button below, and we'll see you next time.